Hi, my name is Josh Kelly. I'm going to be doing this presentation here on ghostwriting. Specifically, the title is From Novelist to Full-Time Ghostwriter. When I had my first book published, which wasn't a novel, but actually a Christian living book, is published by Harvest House, and my editor at that point wanted to be very clear. He said, "Josh, don't think that just because you're having a book published means that this is now going to be your career." Because I kind of had some hopes that way. And when he said that, of course, I didn't want to believe him. But it turns out he was right. And it took a very long path for me to be able to go to become a full-time author. And that path for me led through ghostwriting. And I think for a lot of Christian writers, a lot of us come to it for different reasons, and we have something we want to say and different goals. But for most writers who want to become full-time ghostwriters, your best avenue is going to be something aside from actually selling the books that you write. Some people become public speakers and sell their books that way, or some people have some other ministry going on. But for me, ghostwriting has been that. And just a little bit of some caveats. I'm not necessarily, there's some really long-term pro ghostwriters out there who have years in the field. I've been doing this for about 3 years, but I am making a full-time living doing it. And as I said, I have my own one traditionally published book, a novel that I wrote that we'll get to that shortly. And I've at this point ghostwritten 15 books. Yeah, I think, I'll be done with the 15th by the time you get this. So it's a long process. So that's the first caveat. I'm not trying to be like the biggest expert in the world, but I've walked down this journey, and I think I have some stuff that I can offer to you. And the other key point is that this is not a 3 steps to a 6-figure job. Just do this, this, and this. Without a doubt, number one, it's a lot of work, and number two, God has to favor it. This is something that you can't make happen in the sense that, like, if you go get a job and just punch the clock and you're going by hours, you're going to make a living. This is much more like commission in a field that's not necessarily always so certain. So that said, a little bit of my story. So I was a pastor for 14 years. First, about 7 years as an assistant pastor at a very large church up here in Northwest Washington. Mount Vernon's where I live, about halfway between Seattle and Vancouver, British Columbia. And then another 7 as lead pastor of my own very tiny church. During my time at that church, The Gathering was the name of my church, I wrote this book called Radically Normal. It basically got to a place where something that I talked about became important enough to me to actually go and do something with it. But as things happened, the church shrunk down to a place that's no longer feasible. We just couldn't even keep our Sunday school teachers, and weren't even enough Sunday school teachers. So we just had to close it, and close it well. And was really interesting is that the day I got, let's see if I can remember this. Oh yeah, so our last Sunday there in that church, Sunday whatever, May whatever, and then the following day I got my writer's first copy of my book, and it was such an exciting event. I got my book, and I literally carried it around with me all day long. I didn't want to put it down because I was so excited to have this book. But it was like God was like shutting one door very distinctly, and I thought He was opening up another one because here came my book out that right time, and hence that's why my editor gave me the suggestion, the warning, like, you're probably not going to be able to make a full-time living at this right away. But after that, we didn't know what to do, so my family and I sold our house, packed our daughters up into a minivan, and drove around the country for 8 months and saw 40 states, 2 provinces, and Tijuana. So I got to see a lot of the country, and then came back, and I knew that I didn't want to be a pastor anymore. I was pretty burned out. I knew that I wanted to write, but I also knew I couldn't make a living at it quite yet, and I also knew that I had to provide for my family. So I became a bartender. So I was a bartender for 7 years at some kind of cool places, not like dive bars, but just some really good places. And during that time, what I would do is I would go in to my favorite coffee shop, write all morning long, go in, bartend at night, then come home and repeat. So I'm going through this process, and being a pastor, there's like parts of being a pastor that really hit me well. I really enjoyed. I'm a communicator. I'm a speaker. I have another session here, public speaking for writers, and that part was fun. The writing sermons I really enjoyed, but there's so much of the job I just frankly wasn't very good at. I mean, my idea of counseling is, stop being stupid, read the Proverbs, and read 2 Proverbs, call me in the morning. That's kind of how I was. So I always felt like I wasn't quite being able to do what I need to do as a pastor. It's never felt like I was quite in where I belonged. And chances are good, that feeling. Bartending, I enjoyed it on a level, but it wasn't fulfilling in terms of what I wanted to do. But I was writing this novel, I was really enjoying it, and that's kind of what kept me going. Then came 2020. All of a sudden, I'm out of a job. My novel's done. I've been trying to sell it. No luck. And now I have nothing to do, and the government's paying me not to work. At that point, I contacted a friend of mine who was also published by Harvest House, and he had some sort of self-publishing group, and so I asked him if he'd contacted me a bit prior about doing some ghostwriting. At the time, I wasn't interested, but I had nothing else to do, so I wrote 1 chapter for them. And what I discovered was that I was good at it. And it's kind of something that, as I talk to the ghostwriters, one of the things we always say is that no one grows up thinking, I'm going to be a ghostwriter when I grow up, right? That's never on our list of like ideal professions. It's something we've all stumbled into. So in my case, it was, I wrote this 1 chapter and realized I'm really good at it. And specifically, what it was is the ability to mimic voices. I'm going to get to that in a little bit, because I'm pitching this specifically as how to take your skills as being a novelist and using those for being a ghostwriter. So I'll fast forward on that a little bit. But then from there, a buddy of mine who was an author, he offered me a position. He had a friend who wanted to publish their book, and it needed some editing, and that editing actually meant complete rewrite because it was a mess. And from there, God has been gracious. I keep on having project after project. I've had very little downtime. I actually had one period of time where like a project ended sooner than I thought, and I had some downtime, and that got a little scary there, but I got some other stuff to keep me busy during that time. And so the thing is, for me, for the first time in my life, I feel like I'm in the right ballpark. Writing, ghostwriting, doing some coaching, developmental editing. This is the sort of thing I was meant to do, at least a lot closer to it than anything else I've ever done. Yet I had to go through every step to get here. There's a part of me that's like, well, man, couldn't this happen sooner? I'm turning 50 this year. So it's 47 when I started ghostwriting. Couldn't I have done this earlier? So honestly, no. So many skills that I learned along the way brought me to where I am. And this whole journey has taught me a lot about trusting God in the process. And something I talk a lot about, and I'll probably talk about a little bit later, is faith and hustle. There is this sense of faith that God's guiding, but then also at the same time hustling really hard to work to get things going. So let's just start by so when I do classes, normally there's a lot of interaction, questions and answers, and that's so much of the process. And obviously this format doesn't allow for that. So I'm going to, on my website, find some way to allow you to ask questions. And if I get enough questions, I'll maybe do like a Zoom meeting where we can have a Q&A time. That's going to be on my website, Josh Kelly, JOSHKELLEY .inc, INK, like the stuff you write with, /CCWC for Cascade Christian Writers Conference. So, and I'll have that written down there below as well. But anyways, go check that out. And if you have some questions, I'll be the place to post it. I don't exactly know the format I'm going to use yet, but we'll figure it out. So there we go. That's all my prelude here. Think quickly about ghostwriting. How do you think it's viewed? As you kind of think about conversations and kind of the tone of voice people have when they talk about ghostwriting. How do you think about ghostwriting? Does it feel like it's cheating? Do you feel like it's unethical? Do you feel like it's a great endeavor? I was at a writers conference not terribly long ago, and I was at the table with a couple of the other faculty, and one of the main speakers, when I mentioned that I was a ghostwriter, she just went on this whole thing about this little mini tirade about how it's deceptive and all these things, and it's wrong. And I just like, I was a little blindsided, to be honest, but I just didn't say much. I was like, okay. I knew that I didn't feel that way about it, but this is where I'm at. And I've thought a lot about ghostwriting, and there's a couple different things going on. First of all, I believe that ghostwriting is a great example of the body of Christ at work, right? that, not everyone is a hand, not everyone's a foot, not everyone's an eye. We all have our own skills. The clients I work with, many of them are capable writers on their own, in their own, on their own, in their own sphere. But to write a full book is something they don't have the time to do, nor do they have the ability to do, not on the level that I'm able to do it. And I've spent, I don't know, 14, 15, 16 years learning how to become a good writer. I've invested a lot of time into this. I've read more books than you can imagine. I've written millions of words and discarded almost that many. These clients of mine have spent that amount of time, if not more, doing their own thing, whatever it is that God's called them to do in their own endeavor. Why should they have to, now they've reached this point in their life where they have these skills, these experiences, this story to tell, why should they go and have to spend 15 years learning how to do that and then tell their story? It is the body of Christ. Here's a skill I have, here's a skill you have, we bring it together. And so really this great collaborative process. And there's it's okay that not everyone's a great writer. It really is, because they're better at other things. And it's also okay that not everyone has the time to write a full book. That really is okay. And just kind of like now, if I could go back and say something to that gal, I probably still wouldn't say it, but as I've thought more about it, you look at the Bible, or St. Paul in particular. At several points, you see him saying something about like, thanking so and so that wrote the book, and we know that from historical references that it was a very common process to hire professionals to actually write things for you. They're called amanuenses. And basically, that parchment was so expensive, you wanted to write really small in this way so that you get as much packed into one letter as possible. So it's pretty common to hire someone. And we know that Paul employed these because at several points he thanks them. And then he also at other points says, see, I'm writing in my own hand, see what large letters I use, and things like this. But we also know there's other places where he doesn't acknowledge an amanuensis. And that doesn't mean he didn't use one then, because again, he wrote in big writing that was expensive. Chances are he didn't always mention the person. He's using a ghostwriter to a certain extent. And how much did that amanuensis have input on the wording and the sort of the style? We don't really know. Some conservative scholars look at the differences between the pastoral epistles and how different they are in style and vocabulary with, say, Romans, and they say maybe it was that the amanuensis was different, and that's why there's a different style. And I think that's a much better explanation than more liberal scholars who say, well, that's because Paul didn't write those other books and they're actually a late edition. And now I'm getting into textual criticism. I'm getting into some rhetorical criticism and stuff that really not the topic. The point is, I do believe that there's a place for ghostwriters. I believe that it can be a very noble thing. And I have the knowledge that there are books out there that would not be out there. There's stories being told that would not have been told if it weren't for my help, by God's grace. And so that's how I feel about it. And additionally, it is a way that can make a good living. Excuse me while I adjust this. I think I just made it worse. There we go. So I can kind of see that it's a little bit uneven. It's just driving me crazy as I talk. Forgive me. So, that said, that's ghostwriting. That's why I believe it's important. That's why I believe it's a very legitimate, there's lots of questions to be asked about how sort of acknowledgement should be given, and is it okay to completely hide things? I'm afraid I made it worse in the process of doing that. Okay, there we go. But now let's talk the skills you need to be a good ghostwriter. And these are, first of all, a couple of skills that if you are a good novelist or a good writer, you already have. And specifically, to be a good ghostwriter, you have to be a great writer. There's no substitute for that. There's no other way around that. You have to be a great writer. So I'm going to kind of come from the assumption that you've written things that have been published, that or have been self-published and have done well, that people aside from just your friends say this is good, but that your writing style is good. That's the first thing. You have to be a great writer. Second of all, you have to be able to mimic voices. And this is kind of the hidden thing that being a novelist gave me, is that, on any given moment, when you're writing a story, you have various voices going on in your head, right? I know how Leah talks. I know how Leah's mom talks. I know how Davy talks. And I have all these voices in my head. and I'm writing in that style. Ghostwriting is like that, except that they're real people instead of ones that are just talking in your own head. So that being able to create a unique voice. I mean, when you think what you do as a novelist, you use you match education. You make sure that your character uses similes that fit their worldview, and that you look for vocabulary and cadence that fits them. When you're ghostwriting, you are trying to capture that voice from your client. A major way I do this is I record everything, all my conversations, and that way I can listen for turns of a phrase. I can listen for specific vocabulary they use, the way they structure their sentences. So like one of my current clients is a black pastor, so the way he talks is very different than previous clients who was an entrepreneur in the medtech space. Um, Both very intelligent men, but speak very differently. So those are some things that, and also you try to get to know your client's personality. I like to have them take like a Myers-Briggs test, so I kind of have a sense of introvert versus extrovert, and kind of how they think, how they present themselves. Another skill that, as a great novelist, is already going to have is that you need to be very self-disciplined. This is you're working for someone else, you're self-employed, so you have to be very disciplined. You have to make things happen, and because no one else is going to. And then finally, I feel like most writers are very curious. That's part of the job. Being curious without judgment. Now that doesn't mean you can't at some point form an assessment, a judgment of something that someone did, but as you're listening, you don't have judgment. You just need to be a curious person, and just basically, I'm curious about everything. That's kind of one of the fun things I love about being a ghostwriter. Is I get to learn about so much. I got one client flew me out to Nigeria and Kenya to do research for a book, which was a lot of fun. And for me, that's just like my happy place to learn new stuff. But I remember I was attending a seminar or some webinar once, and in the side chat, someone asked, the presenter, like, "Well, where'd you get your name from? It's a very unique name," or something like it's like kind of an unusual name for an American dude. And someone else in the chat responded, "I was always taught it is rude to ask people about their names." And I saw that, I'm like, what's the politest way I can, first of all, call it this, not call it this person, but say, don't shut people down, or help the original asker not feel shut down, and also to respond. And I just said, yeah, maybe that is a little rude, but as a writer, I'm used to being rude because I'm curious. That is part of the job. You can be curious about things. So those are all skills that I kind of assuming you already have the ability to being a good writer, being able to mimic voices, being disciplined, and then also being curious without judgment. Okay, now here's the new skills you need to add to that in order to be a good ghostwriter, I believe, from my experience. And now, you may not have all these. That's okay. This may be for you. Coming to this class is like a chance for you to figure out whether or not ghostwriting is even something you want to do. But here's things that you have to be able to do, I believe, to be a good ghostwriter. One, you have to have a heart to serve. Your goal is to serve people. I believe that's true of all writers, but you have to specifically be desiring to serve people. That sense that there are books out there that wouldn't be out there if it weren't for me. My personal mission statement is to bring more God-honoring, life-changing books into the marketplace. That is what I want to do. Some of those books I'll make a living off of because I'll ghostwrite them or I'll coach for them. Sometimes it'll just be a conversation. I won't make any money off of them. Hopefully, things I say here help you bring more God-honoring, life-changing books into the marketplace. And I'm not going to receive anything off it other than this is my calling. This is what I get to do. This is the way I get to serve. And there's certainly a business side to this, but at the same time, if I can keep on advancing that mission, I feel like I'm doing what God's called me to do. Also, to be a good ghostwriter, you need to not care about the credit. You have to be okay with not having your name on the book. That is something that it seems like it's easy until you have to actually do it. The gentleman who wrote the Prince Harry's memoir, Spare. He has an article in the New Yorker. Really good. I would suggest you look it up and read it. is J.R. Morgenthau or something like that. I don't remember his exact name. But there's this fun part where he like specifically said, I don't want to have cover credit on this book. But then he found himself getting irritated when the prince didn't mention him by name in an interview, which is kind of very this reflection of this is kind of this tension that you do hold. But in general, you have to be okay with not receiving the credit. For me, whether or not I get a collaboration credit is a strategic thing. I ask myself, is this a situation where by getting it on here, it will give me the opportunity to connect with other people, or that, da 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 da. In some cases, I believe having my name on there will actually benefit the writer, my client, because they may not have written anything, and so having someone else join along with them will show that it's better written. You also have to be okay with lack of creative control. This is tough. That you'll have feelings about this is how it should be done, but at the end of the day, it is not your book. At the end of the day, it's their choice of what's going to happen. I had one book, man. I really enjoyed writing it. I had so much fun writing it, and I got through, finished the first draft, sent it to the client, and the client said, "Yeah, this is really good, but I decided to go a different direction." Huh? What? And so it still is sitting in her hard drive and mine, unpublished. And I think it's good material. And of course, the initial question was like, what did I do wrong? But she later hired me to do other stuff. So it's not that I did something wrong. It's just that's what she decided to do. I have no control over that. Another skill you have to be a good ghostwriter, I believe, is to write fast, to be able to work fast. That's tough. But there's a quote that I have up on my chalkboard that's right there, that says, inspiration is for amateurs. The rest of us just show up and get to work. When you're a full-time writer, you can't be waiting for the muse. This is now your job. It's your livelihood. You have to make yourself write whether you want to or not. This is actually something I learned from being a pastor that's very helpful. And that was that, with being a pastor, you're writing a short book or an article every week in the form of a sermon. Every week so Monday I would gather all my materials, Tuesday I would start writing, and then my goal was to have it done by Thursday because I take Friday and Saturday off. Without fail, by the end of Tuesday, I would have my stuff kind of together, and I just felt, this is garbage. What am I even talking about? Why am I even a pastor? I have no business doing this. This is worthless. I'm so stupid. And then by Thursday, I'd have a sermon that was like, I can't wait to share this. I'm so excited to talk to my people about this. And the funny thing is, that feeling never went away. After 7 years of being a lead pastor, so preaching, 3 to 4 times a month, so however many hundred sermons that was, I still felt that feeling every Tuesday. But I could laugh at myself and say, hey, Josh, this is what I do. This is what you do every time. Now, just get back to work. You have to have that ability to push yourself through those lulls, through those dry spells and writer's block. You don't have a choice. You just have to get to work. Along those lines, in terms of working fast, one of the key points in my work was when I decided to rent an office. So I'm here in a little office just off of the First Street downtown Mount Vernon, and it seems like a strange expense to have, even when, like, sometimes when I'm not getting the business. But if I don't have an office, I can't, for me, because of just how I function with my ADHD, I would not be able to do this at home. I can't do this in a coffee shop. I did it for a while. I could work for 3 hours pretty well, but I couldn't put in 7-8 hour days in a coffee shop. So for me, this is an investment I have to make. Unfortunately, it's fairly affordable here. Next, you have to have excellent people skills. That's it. It doesn't mean you have to be an extrovert, but you have to be really good with people, because you are having to convince people to trust you with their lives. They're giving something to you, and they have to feel like you're trustworthy. They have to connect. You have to feel like there's something there. You have to be great at building rapport. You have to demonstrate that you understand. You have to be great at listening. I think I may have said that already, but let me say it again. You have to be great at listening. Here's one of the things I've learned in life. If I'm talking, I'm not learning. Right now, I'm not learning anything. Hopefully you are, but I'm not learning a thing. when I'm interviewing, there is that tendency, because I'm a teacher and because I like to talk, to want to kind of put in my thing when, here's this. But unless it's actually being part of the conversation, I need to do as much shutting up as possible. Uh, Being able to interview people is huge. Being able to pull more out of them. Um, Being able, part of that, I heard listening to someone on a podcast or something or a webinar about ghostwriting, and someone said that they tell their clients, "Let me lie for you," which really made me laugh. It's a great way of putting it, because the point isn't we're trying to be deceptive, but don't as a client, I'm trying to encourage them, don't filter anything out. Don't worry about how this will make you look. Don't worry about any of that. Just give it to me, and then that's my job to look at it, say, what do we need to share? What do we need to not share? What can be held back? But you have to give it all to me. It's kind of like a lawyer needs to hear everything from his client, or else he can't really help the client. And you also have to be able to push your client through. Now, this depends on the genre, of course, but a lot of times you have to push them through to get them to talk about things that they don't necessarily want to talk about. It takes time to develop that rapport, but you have to push them to be more authentic, to give you more material. And so this ability to be pushy yet friendly is huge. Okay, so there is that's next excellent people skills. Additionally, you need to be a professional, not an artiste. I'm wearing a tie. If you see any of my other sessions, I will be wearing just like, I like Hawaiian shirts. That's why I usually wear, not Hawaiian shirts, sorry. Anyways, I have other shirts I normally wear, and I don't like wearing a tie, but I'm wearing it today for this session to make this one point. As a ghostwriter, you are a professional. You have to present yourself as a professional. You have to look the part. So when I meet clients, until I've already known them several times, I'm going to be wearing a tie to every meeting to demonstrate I'm a professional. With that, also, it's an entire mindset that you have about being a professional. That this is something, I'm not an amateur. I'm not someone who's doing this for fun, but this is my job, and I'm expecting people to invest a lot of money in me. I mean, my working rate is roughly $1 a word. That's no small amount of money, and so I need to do everything I can to demonstrate that I'm a professional. I'm can be trusted with that money. That I'm not a fly-by-night organization. At the end, I'm going to talk about some of the tools I use, some of the digital tools, but I pay for the upgraded version of things like Calendly, Zoom, and other such things to remove the watermark from it. There's no, if you go to my website, it doesn't say, provided by Weebly. It's all going to look more professional than that. I'm not going to be on a meeting with a client who might have me write a 50,000 word book and have the Zoom call drop out at 40 minutes because I'm using the free version. So I pay extra for that. So this is a mindset, this professional mindset that you have to be a professional. And this is something I referenced earlier, is this ability to balance hustle and faith. That you're working as hard as you can, but yet God has to make this happen. That when it comes to trying to find new clients, I'll get into that a little bit more. I will do everything. I will try everything. I have put in a ton of work trying to get clients, but at the end of the day, I know God has to make it happen. There's back when my first book came out, and I was trying to do everything I could to get that book noticed. I saw in my neighborhood someone lost their cat. I knew they lost their cat because they put up about 200 posters, and I'm not exaggerating at that point. I mean, there was a lot of posters of this cat postered everywhere. Now, those folks could not make their cat come home. The cat could have been dead in a ditch when they put those posters up, but they could put as many posters up as possible to increase the possibility of them getting the cat back. And that's kind of the mentality I have. I'm going to keep on putting posters up, but I know that whether or not I get the work is going to be God. So it's this faith and hustle. And I won't say I've mastered this, but it is key to being an entrepreneur, a writer, a ghostwriter. And then finally, the last thing that you need to have, I believe, to be a great ghostwriter is to be a real sense of gratitude. Gratitude that, I'm so lucky to do this. I mean, there's hard days. This can be a lot of work. There's been times I've been very frustrated. There's been clients that I've wanted to, get frustrated. But at the end of the day, I'm being paid to write. That's kind of cool. And so this sense of gratitude, and I get to the people I get to talk to, the people I get to meet with, um, is cool, and I'm very grateful for it. And that's a mindset that I just think is vital. Okay, so there are some of the tools, some of the skills I think you need to have for being a ghostwriter. Here now, I'm going to go to some of the tools of the trade. So I started with some of the skills you already have, new skills you need to develop, and then tools of the trade. A place to work is, I believe, critical. Different people, you have to know yourself. You know what you need to do. Can you will it work for you to have a corner in your bedroom? Coffee shop. Again, for me, it's the office. That's you have to do some cost analysis, like what's and also where you're going to meet people. To have a Zoom meeting at a place where it's not professional. To me, that's important. I want to have something that's professional when people see me on the Zoom meeting. Another key tool, I believe, is a good website. It doesn't need to be complicated, but it needs to have so people know how to get a hold of you and look good enough that people they can trust you, and give them the information they need. Insurance. This is something I have. I have liability insurance, or basically it's called errors and omissions (E&O) insurance through the Authors Guild. That's, by the way, I'm part of the Authors Guild. That they have some benefits with involved, and plus I like being part of the Authors Guild because they are the ones representing my interests as an author to Congress. I don't necessarily agree with all of their stances on everything, but it's good to have lobbyists who are looking out for you, especially like for right in the current this day right now. The stuff I'm getting from the Authors Guild is talking a lot about AI, specifically the fact that AI is using published materials. It's trained on on published materials, copyright materials, and it's using that to create material. So what about the people who created the original? And so just anyways, it's good to have an organization that's looking out for you. And among other things, they offer a resource of some good rates on liability insurance. I mean, when it comes to that quickly, there's a lot of discussion about memoirs or whatnot, or can you be sued for libel or slander and all these sort of things. And the short answer is you can be sued by anyone for anything. That's just the way it works. That doesn't mean the lawsuit's going to be successful, but someone can try to sue you for anything. The bar for I think libel, I think, is the one that's written. Maybe slander. Forgive me, I don't remember which terms which. But the bar for proving slander, we'll say libel. The bar for successfully suing someone for libel is pretty high. They have to prove that you acted with absolute indifference to the truth. So it's hard to do. It can happen, but it's hard to do. But that doesn't mean you can't be sued. So I want to know that and also when my contracts assign all my all liability, once it's done, the client has complete liability for it. I write that in my contract. That doesn't mean that someone might not try to come after me. And so for that reason, that's why I want to have a lawyer available that's going to be able to back me up, because I don't want to have to go through the lawsuit. Not because I wouldn't win, but because I just don't want to have that hassle. And okay, so some other tools. These are apps. There's a lot of great apps out there. These are some of the ones I use. I'll have this list there on the website. Zoom. Come on, well, I use it. Not necessarily my favorite, but it does the job. Toggle, that is a great tool for tracking your time. I track the time I spend on everything because once I started doing that and I realized how long it took me to do things, I started realizing how badly I was undercharging people. And so that's kind of what made me realize, okay, wait, every client, one of the things I realized is if I had a potential client, roughly, if I'm trying to pursue a client, it's roughly 2 hours of my time, an hour of prep and an hour of actually meeting with them. When I realized that and thought through how much my time is worth, I got a lot better at weeding out the tire kickers. I'll get to that in just 1 second here for that. Actually, a little bit further down. Otter, is a transcription service. It's on my phone. I click the button and it records all my conversations and then our conversation and then transcribes them. I'm going to play with some other tools now that transcriptions seem to be getting a little better. The one that comes on the Android phone seems to be really good. Otter's not free. I have to pay again because that one has limits. Like you can only do so long. I need to look into Google and some other services to see if those are valuable. There's some other project management software that can be helpful. I've used Trello. I like it, but I don't use it a ton. Calendly is one of my big ones. Calendly is basically a great tool for allowing people to book sites. I send them a link, and people can book a meeting with me. The great thing about Trello, and the reason why I pay for the like second tier, maybe third tier service, is because it can require people to answer questions before, like, what's your email, what's your website, what's the main premise of your idea, and here's the big one. My rate is roughly $1 per word. Can you afford that? I say it a little bit nicer than that. Or my coaching services. My coaching service is $750 a month. Are you able to make that investment? I send different links depending on whether someone's interested in coaching or ghostwriting or whatnot. By forcing them to click yes or no, that really weeds out a lot of people who probably just aren't that interested. And that saves me a ton of time. That feature alone makes it worth the extra, $5 a month or whatever it is. Query tracker, I use that for keeping track of if I'm ever doing queries, and that's a great source for queries for yourself, for other people. I like it. They have a free version. I personally pay the extra $50 a year, whatever it is, because it's a great program and I want to support them. LinkedIn is my main social network now. I'm almost never on Facebook. I'm on LinkedIn more because that's a professional network, and I haven't necessarily gotten jobs. I've made some good connections from that. Personal development, another tool of the trade. There's some great books out there, and you should always be developing yourself as both as a writer and as a ghostwriter. Some books that I recommend: Cecil Murphy, Ghostwriting, the Cecil Murphy Method, I believe it is. I wish I would have gotten this like when I first started. There's just a lot of great material in here. Talk to Me is a book about interviewing. This gentleman was a professor of journalism at Point Loma. Great stuff on interviewing. Great story. One of my favorite stories is when he actually peed his pants when an interview went long, rather than cut off this interview that he just knew such he's so lucky to get this interview. He was like, I'm not getting up or anything. Anyways, that's commitment. Also, trying to stay current in your field. This is something I try to do, is just have various magazines and e-zines that I subscribe to that kind of help me. I subscribe to Christianity Today. That's about $60 a year. That lets me, since I'm trying to write in the Christian marketplace, that gives me a good sense of what's going on. And that's I read through that all the time. And one of my clients was actually, I read an article about this one person, really impressed with what they're doing, and so I reached out to them, and I ended up doing work for them, which was really cool. Jane Friedman's Hot Sheet, that's another paid service. It's like every other week, just get some great information about the publishing world. I like to know about the publishing world because your clients are going to be asking publishing type questions. I tell them that's not my area. I'm not a marketer or all this, but I want to at least know kind of how things work. Jane Friedman also, if you're not already subscribed to her like weekly blog, do that. And they have seminars. She has seminars all the time, really low cost point, usually $25 for a seminar, and it's great stuff. So I just before I recorded this, I watched a seminar that she offered on structuring your memoir, because I do a lot of memoirs. Did I already know some of the stuff in there? Yeah, I knew a lot of it. Was there stuff I learned? Oh yeah, you better believe it. So things like that. Doing whatever you can. You always need to be growing as a writer. Writer's Digest is another one I subscribe to. Publishers Weekly, just kind of be aware of what's going on there. I do the free one. I don't do the paid one. Obviously, there's a lot more tools, but there's just some things that have been very helpful to me. Finding work. So this is the one that everyone wants to know about. Like, well, how do I get work? It's complicated, and there's no easy, sure path forward. And again, God has to favor this. I don't. I know that's going to sound like a cop out, but you have to be convinced that God's calling you into this. And there's been several times where I've questioned that. Like, when I'm getting near the end, the book I'm just finishing, it got a little close for comfort between when it was finished and when I got the next contract. And it's like, God, I'm pretty sure you have me in this. You've been doing a lot of stuff. You've done some amazing stories. Um, but it can be really hard. And so just that to know God needs to be in it. I don't think you can force this to happen. Uh, know your specialties. What is it that you're good at? What can you offer that other people can't? What's your background? And the better you know what you can offer, then the better position going to be. You are going to be in to find people to offer it to. So to build up a writing resume, you should have a writing resume. The sort of stuff you've written, the sort of the people you've talked to, and get a sense of what are some of the places you can talk to. My next suggestion then is it's best if you can start small. Again, I was fortunate. I was on unemployment when I got started. I was able to do jobs for next to nothing because the government was paying my salary. But before my time ran out on unemployment, I was able to get a large enough contract and say, thank you, bye-bye, no more filling out these silly reports. And that felt really good. But just trying to find small jobs to help people out, to get practice for writing. Copywriting is one possibility. Maybe volunteering for some stuff. Here's kind of one of my beliefs is that if you can't do what you want to do, at least try to do something adjacent to it. Try to find something roughly in that field that either to volunteer or to make money. So in addition to trying to work your own networks, so that's why with the writing resume and trying to think through all the people you know, and maybe sending out, hey, this is what I'm going to do. I'd like to practice. Could I write a chapter for you? Just try to find ways to just try to get a name for yourself and get some referrals. There's a lot of platforms available for writing, but there's a lot of caveats with that. So there's ones like Upwork, Thumbtack, Fiverr. These ones, they're out there and people get work on them. And some of the people in my Ghostwriting Association use that. But most of the people who are looking on those platforms are looking for dirt cheap. I was on them for a little while and got off right away because I just wasn't getting anything of value. Again, I know people who have, but it's not, people don't necessarily have a great sense of the value of your time on those websites. So the platform I've had the best luck with is one called Reedsy, Reedsy. They don't have a ton of ghostwriters on them, which is one of the things that work in my favor, and not a ton of Christian ghostwriters. However, they vet their professionals a lot more than other places. I had to have 5 book credits before I could, and that's even one of those being traditionally published. I had to have 5 books I'd done prior to being brought in, which is tough. And so that's where you try to do jobs for cheaper so that you can start getting those credits, because not all of them they can be self-published. If they can find them on Amazon, that's usually, or even articles. They will accept articles that you've written, so that can be another good place to go. But Reedsy, I have a love-hate relationship with Reedsy. I've got some of my biggest clients from them, including the one that flew me to Nigeria and Kenya. But they also charge a lot, and they're just kind of a pain. Anyways, yeah, ghostwriters who use them, we have all of our little annoyances, not horror stories, just annoyances. Then there are simply making cold calls. When I reached out to that person featured in that Christianity Today article, that's a cold call. And I wrote it in a way to say, hey, I know this is a cold call. This may seem kind of creepy, but I read the article. I thought about reaching out to you and then decided, no, that's too creepy. I wrote better than this when I'm just giving you the short version. But then 2 days later, I was still thinking about it, so I decided to go and reach out to you. And it turns out that at that point in her life, she actually was thinking about writing a memoir. Then there are some that you can hire marketing services and specialists. Two thoughts, first of all, finding ones that fit your style and fit that are legitimate is tough. Number two, they're expensive. Number three, make sure that you're ready to make use of whatever work you get, that you're at the capability level that you can actually go for it. Um, I have not had, I've done a couple things, I haven't had great luck with it. The stuff that I've seen to me was a little bit too spammy. This is something on LinkedIn where sending out stuff to just random people, not random, but it's targeted, but still it was just too spammy. So I ended up not using it, but it's worked for a lot of people. So I want to talk briefly. This is I don't know how useful this is going to be, but this is the sort of things people have asked about, and that's wanting to know what my process is like as a ghostwriter. And maybe this will be helpful to you. Great. If not, great. Each person's process is different. Furthermore, each client is incredibly different. So what I even try to think, like, what's my standard process is like on the most recent book. It's like each time they can be so different. But in general, I will, so I'll get one in my mind. So I had someone reach out to me on Reedsy. He had this book idea, and I looked into it, and okay, this guy looks interesting. His story's interesting. I'm a little intrigued. I'm not sure about some of it, so I did some research. No, this guy's legit. So I met with him. As we had this initial conversation, I went into that meeting having already read his LinkedIn, a couple articles that I found out about him. So remember what I said, if I'm actually going to meet with someone, but by the time, if I'm going to try to get someone, minimum 2 hours I'm investing into them, if not more. I read everything I could about him. I was able to cite some stuff from his history, these kinds of prices I knew. But then when I met with him, basically said, okay, I want to hear your story. I want to hear your book idea. But first, the most important thing is what's your purpose and your goal? And this is how I delineate those. Purpose is, what is it that you want the reader to walk away with? These terms are interchangeable, but again, this is how I use it. Purpose is like your book is, someone has read your book, they close it. What is it that you want them to know, to feel, to do? What's that? And that usually gets them thinking, and that gives me an idea of what sort of book they're wanting to write. Then the second question is, what is your goal? What do you want to achieve for yourself? What is your professional goal in this? If they say my goal is to be traditionally published and make lots of money, it's like that's not a great client, because unless they have some very compelling stuff going on and a huge platform, probably not going to happen. I don't need to tell you how difficult it is to be self-published. I mean, to be traditionally published. But that can give me a sense of how realistic they are, and also know what sort of thing they're looking for. I've had clients who are interested in hiring me, potential clients, who want to be like a keynote speaker, and they need to have a book to go with that. And when we talked about that, then now that it becomes, okay, do you just want a book, like something PDF done, or do you want like a good book? Because if you want just a book that's something you can download and it's okay, there's a lot of people who are a lot cheaper than I am. You could probably just about use AI to create that book. Probably not, but at least you can get something that's like almost digestible. But if you want a good book, a book that will like stick with people, well, then that might be why you want to hire me. But these are all the questions I want to find what they're hoping to get, to know how realistic it is and know whether or not I can deliver. Then the rest of the conversation, I'm trying to find out if I'm interested, if I'm intrigued. I had one project, man. I wanted to want it. It's kind of like, how sometimes, back when I was in high school, there's this girl that her and I got along great, and I wanted for us to be into each other, but she's another amazing person. She was an amazing person. I was a good Christian. It's like, it seems like it should have worked, but there was just nothing there. And sometimes just nothing's going to be there. And thank God, because she's not the one I married, right? I married my wife. But sometimes something this one particular project's like, I should want to do this, but it's not interesting to me. So I turn it down. I'm looking for something intriguing, something that makes me want to do it. Okay, so then they decide they want to hire me. There's some back and forth, some like, okay, here's my terms. And they kind of come up with this basic contract. And there's different resources for that. My next thing in most cases is I'm going to fly out and meet with them. I want to spend about minimum 4 days, 4 or 5 days with them in their space to some extent, and just hearing them talk, recording. I had one that I got 45 hours worth of recordings from, because I want to hear more of the story. And sometimes it's just little side comments that become so pivotal. Just this little like, oh yeah, blah blah blah. And, whoa, hang on, repeat that. That's really good, and it can become a cornerstone of the book. And you just need time with someone. Uh, One of the podcasts I listen to is called As Told To, another great resource. And that guy's basically said you have to listen to a lot of boring stories, and you have to be willing to hear the same story told multiple times before they'll trust you with the good stories. Okay, so I'll meet with them, and then hopefully during that time, I'll start to get a sense of the outline of the book, where we're going to go with it, and be able to present it to them, and so kind of get an arc of where their life is. And if it's a memoir, I do memoirs and business books and Christian and leadership, Christian living. Those are kind of my main areas. But hopefully get some sort of sense of the outline. Have all this information. We've had these conversations. Now I feel like I know them all enough that we can do everything else via Zoom, because almost all my clients have been out of the area. Fly home. I then spend a solid week listening to all of the recordings, creating an outline, and kind of finding that structure. Now that's something I'm good at. I've got this. I'm really good at the big picture. ADHD, dyslexia means I take in a ton of information. I can remember 45 hours of the interviews well enough to chart this entire arc, and also to see things, bring together pieces that my client couldn't. This one gentleman with the 45 hours, at one point I said, so it sounds like your father was a tragic figure. And I just got to see like the realization. He's like, oh gosh, yeah, he was. He was. And I was able to see things, and frequently you'll be able to see things in someone's life that they can't see in themselves. Again, this is in the memoir field, but a lot of times you'll be able to bring in things that other people can't bring in. So I take all that time. I listen to all the recordings. A lot of times transcriptions are, depending, especially on how good the quality is. Try to get the mic, if you're transcribing, try to get the mic quality as good as possible. I just bought something new, and hopefully this works well, but these are two little lapel mics and a little receiver that plugs into my Android phone. And in theory, that should make it a lot easier to record stuff, because a lot of times the reason why the transcriptions are bad is because the recording isn't as good as it should have been. And hopefully that's going to save me a lot of time by using that. Then from there, after I've listened to all that, I create an outline, a good solid outline, and I basically ask the author, the client, to agree to it. They're like, this is basically what we're working with. You can't really vary a lot, or else there's going to be some added expenses. Once we agree on that, so kind of an outline, chapter markings, then I write the first 1 or 2 chapters, send that to them, see what they think. I tell them I'm not looking for fine details. I'm looking for, does this feel right? Does this fit your voice? Does this? And so the writing process, of course, that's a huge thing, and I'm not going to tell you how to write, because you have to kind of figure that out for yourself. But for me, using the recordings as much as possible to provide the content. But as you well know, the way we talk, translating spoken word into written word, it is a translation. It requires work to transfer it from one to the other. So there's a great book called Dialogue by what's his name? Robert McKee. That really helped me learn a lot about how to write better dialogue. Sorry, that's a little off topic. But anyways, that's to say, by you taking what they said, if I ever am struggling with something, trying to get something together, I found if I go back to what they said in the order they said it in, that usually would give me a good hint. Because when I'm going through all those outlines, I'm moving pieces around. I keep one copy of all of the transcripts on one spot, according to which day it was recorded, which session, and I just leave that in that order. Then I create a new one where I take all those pieces and bring them together and organize it according to what the outline that I've created with the client. But sometimes I need to go back and listen to the unsorted one to find out, oh wait, they went from this topic to this topic. Okay, now I understand what the thought process was. Same as I've written the first couple chapters, send it to them, see what they think. How does this feel? Okay, good. What do you need to change? Then just keep on going send them roughly every 3 chapters or so, and keep on going back and forth until the full thing's done. That's my first draft. I'm in my contract, which I'm going to talk about later. I set up what my editing process is, and one of the things I say is that first draft, as you receive each piece, each couple section of chapters I send you, you're approving the first draft of this book. You can now, if you want to make any paragraph or above changes, you have to do it now. You can't be adding stuff later, and if so, the cost is going to go up and it's going to be delayed, potentially delayed quite a bit. I learned that because I had one gentleman add an entire chapter when we're on the third draft. Fortunately, he paid me for it, but nonetheless, that was that was a good lesson. So go through the entire first draft. At this point, they've approved everything at paragraph level and above. Then I go through a second time. For me, that's where I print it all out. I'm doing all by hand. Once I know the ending, I'm in a better place to rewrite the beginning, and I'm just make all these changes. I send it to them again, and I let them know. So there's going to be one more draft. This draft is for sentence level. If you have any changes you want to be made, you need to do that now, because the next draft is just fine details. And you can read the third draft if you want to, but really it's not going to, if there's anything crucial that changes between second and third draft, I'm going to let you know. And so that's up to them. And I use Word's track changes feature. I'm a big Microsoft Word person. I was using Word back when it was loaded on floppy disks. And so I'm not a Google guy. That's me. I just know my way around Word so much that that's what I'm most comfortable with. After do the second draft, send that to them, get an approval. Then third draft against that fine tuning. What I do, and this has a lot to do with my dyslexia, is that I listen to it. My Word has a read aloud feature, and I literally listen to the whole thing, and that allows me to catch some fine details, but also it allows me to hear the cadence. Like if there's 2 words that even though they're written differently, they sound similarly, I might change them. It gives me a better feel for it. However, so once I get there, I'm done. I've set milestones in terms of when I'm going to receive payment, and so all that stuff's happening. But I also, in my contract, state that my book will be copy edit ready. In other words, I don't deliver a book that is has the full copy editing. They need to hire someone else for that, because no one should do their own copy editing. That is my belief. Absolutely, especially this guy. Again with the dyslexia, I'm going to miss things. And if they are traditionally published, the publisher's going to provide that anyways. And if they're not, well, the good news is I tell them that copy editors are a lot cheaper than I am. It will serve you. You'll pay a lot less to have them do it than to have me do it. So that's basically it. That's kind of my process from start to finish. Some people give me collaboration credits, some don't. That's kind of all negotiated within the contract. Some hard-won lessons. Let's see, my time is just about up, so I'm going to wrap this up. Hard-won lessons. Trust your gut about clients. If something feels off, go with it. Clients that ask for deals are usually going to be the biggest pain. They're going to ask for more and more deals. I've learned that. Create gateways to save time. Okay, I've already talked about that. The whole thing about using a pre-meeting questionnaire. Be very upfront about your fees right at the beginning, because you don't want to waste their time. You don't want to waste your time. And one way I say it, to not actually say numbers, is to say, so you would be paying my full-time salary for about 3 or 4 months. Just by saying that gives people a level of recognition, like, okay, professional, 4 months, got it. I cannot afford this, right? Be very clear about the publishing world. Don't give your clients any false hope. I'm very honest. Like, here's what it takes to be published. It's very hard to do. Very few people are able to do it. Yeah, better to have an uncomfortable conversation at the beginning than at the end. Um, Pastors are not great clients most of the time because pastors are used to getting freebies. And they also, when you're in the church work, and this is speaking as a former pastor, you get tend to think everything as God's work, and that therefore you shouldn't have to pay for it. So I'm not saying no pastors can be good clients, but just understand that can be a rough clientele. Don't undercut yourself. So I'm part of the Association of Ghostwriters. That's an organization well worth looking into. And when we have our monthly meetings, we encourage each other. Charge more. You're worth more than you're charging, and so don't undercut yourself, because by taking a low-paying job, sometimes that can be a really me at the beginning you may need to, but taking a low-paying job means you can't take up a higher-paying job. And I've had clients where I cannot live on what they paid me. It's that simple. I have a recent client I chose to take less, well below my normal rate, because I really did believe in the project. I just felt I was supposed to. But yeah, I had to dip into savings a little bit with that one. I knew that's what was going to happen. Let's see. Always have contracts. Be very clear about who does what and when. Research who's responsible for what. The payments, the milestone payments, like either by date or by the finishing of this draft. For me, first draft. When the first draft is, by the time I finish the first draft, I'm about at least 4/5 of the way through, if not more. So I can't say like, okay, the second half payment comes out at the end of first draft, because I'm almost done. I more tend to do like 2/3 through the first draft is where so okay, always charge a down payment. I do 25% down payment. So here's my fee: 25% down payment to hold the spot, non-refundable, because I could potentially be turning away clients because I'm expecting you. That money is yours. That is to hold your spot. If they cancel, don't feel bad about keeping the money, because again, you're potentially turning away clients to hold that spot open. Um, and when you start thinking through, okay, it takes this long to write a book, this, and this. Okay, there's this period of time I can't really do anything else. That changes how you think about your fees. So I do 25% down payment, 25% at the first this is typical change. Everything can be a little different. 25% when we actually start, if there's a big gap between A and B. And then I do like the other 25% again, right around 2/3, 3/4 of the way through the first draft, and then the final payment when I'm done, with the acceptance of the copy edit ready manuscript. NDAs, non-disclosures, just that you let them know you're not going to be you won't publicly disclose your that you work with them. I have some clauses, various clauses in my contract that I have nicknamed after people. That there's the one I call it the GT clause, that where I define my editing structure, so that if you're going to try to add a chapter during the third round, you're going to have to pay for it, and it could potentially end up pushing your book back 4 months because you have another book waiting for the next one, waiting to finish this one. This is a huge one. I call this the BB contract, and that is that the contract ends at this date. That I can end the contract at this date, usually like a year out or 6 months out, providing I've made a good faith effort to work with you. It will end at this date, because you can have people who just drag things on and on and on. And I had a coaching client that I was anticipating 3 months, and 2 years later, she still hadn't finished. I still on on a retainer for not retirement, but like we still had work that was supposed to be done, and my rates had quadrupled from the time I signed her, because she's one of my earliest clients. Funny thing about that story, she actually ended up saying, you know what, I'm not going to ever write this myself, and so she hired me as her ghostwriter and at my full rate. So that ended out well, but from her I learned to always put kill dates on my contracts. Also, at the end, I state that when the client accepts all responsibility for what is written, and I release all the rights. That's an important thing for their sake, that you have in there, that you release the rights. Everything that you write is yours until you sign away to someone else. And so I state that upon their final payment, I will automatically release the rates. So that is everything I have. There's certainly is a lot more that could be said. Again, normally I like being able to do some question and answer time, but because of the nature of this medium, we can't. So go to that website, the joshkelly.inc and /CCWC, and I'll have some forum for us to be able to ask questions. And my idea would be to get a bunch of questions, do a Zoom meeting for those who are available, and record it. But we'll see how that works. Hey, I hope this was helpful to you. A lot of fun for me. If you're doing like the hybrid where you're going to be at the conference as well as watch it, I'd love to meet you. Feel free to reach out to me on my website. My ability to actually do like coaching on ghostwriting is going to be kind of limited. Like free conversations is going to be kind of limited because my schedule is pretty full. But a couple quick questions I might be able to answer. And yeah, man, best of luck to you. This is, as I said, this is going to be it can be a great thing. I've enjoyed doing it very much. I'm very grateful for the opportunity, and I just wish you all the best.